All right, let's get started at creating your killer business plan. The first step is really to define a very clear business model. The tool we're going to use, and I'm going to teach you, is the Lean Canvas. It's based on Alex Osterwalder's Business Model Canvas from Business Model Generation book. A really great book I highly recommend you look into. But the Lean Canvas is basically an online tool of 9 segments that I briefly mentioned before that allows you to quickly model your company and see if you've covered all the key components you need to have a business plan, and really the foundation of everything you need for a business plan. The whole idea of lean is not about less money or thin or anything like that. It comes from the original idea of Toyota and Japanese lean manufacturing, which is constant improvement and iterations, and many other philosophies. These philosophies have been applied to the startup world, starting up in Silicon Valley and really now spread across the globe because a book by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup has become just one of the most important tomes for entrepreneurs. So another book I highly recommend you read. Now, to get through this section, you won't need to have read those books. I just highly recommend them. One key concept before we get too deep into doing this is that sometimes we like to make business, and business professors are really good at this, but making business much too complex. There's all these details in these HR and there's compliance and all the accounting and everything else. But at the beginning, at the core, the business is actually a really simple equation, and it's really important you keep aligned with this because you can easily get distracted in areas that aren't going to be fundamental to your business model. So what is that key concept? That key concept is an equation that says you have to make something, whether it's a service or product. You have to be able to sell it, which means you have to price it, people are willing to buy it, you got to get it to the customers, whatever. And in the end, you have to have a profit left over. Now, this is a very important concept. Now, in the beginning of startups, you might not be profitable, but long term, your business model has to fit to this mold, which is you're going to have to create something and you're going to have to be able to sell it and then end as a profit. And if you keep focused on that, you'll be a successful business. It's amazing how, if you look at any successful startup, they stayed to the fundamentals and didn't get distracted. So let's jump in and take a look at what the Lean Canvas looks like. You can get this yourself for free, leancanvas.com. But let's jump in and start working through the different segments and build a business model. We're going to use Amazon as our example. But I'm going to use Amazon back in 1994 when it started, understand the limitations of the internet and the market, and go, what would their model look like when they were starting back then? Since Amazon is such a well-known and documented company, we actually have a lot of details about them that allowed me to put together this sample, a business model for you to see what it looks like complete. So let's get started. So this is the Lean Canvas. Now, it doesn't look like the traditional components of a regular business, right? Where's HR? Where are all the other components? Well, those are really tactics. Those are things you'll have to do as part of delivering your business. But that doesn't define what your business model is. And the business model is the foundation of you being a successful business or not, is how well you have these pieces answered and then how well you're able to validate them within the market as you have the right revenue stream, you have a real unfair advantage, you have a solution the market wants that solves a problem. One thing to remember when you see this also is that a startup is not a small version of a big company. There's going to be a lot of components of the business and pieces that you're just not going to deal with early on. And as you scale and become a more mature company, you may have to deal with. But in the beginning, you have enough challenges as a startup to get off the ground that if you can just satisfy the validation of these 9 components, you'll have accomplished a lot to becoming a successful startup. Now, starting with segment 1. First, list your target customers. Who is Amazon's target segment in the very beginning, at the highest level? It's people who buy books, right? And ultimately, anyone that would buy books could be their target customer. Now, the next side of this, in section 1, is the early adopters. Now, the early adopters is where you narrow down your target audience to those you expect to really hit in the first couple of years. The people that you are targeting, that you can handle their demands for. So it comes both the limitation of what you operationally can do and also what you want to target marketing-wise, and it's available in the market. So Amazon, in this case, was avid book readers, so those who are reading maybe several a month, that already use the internet, are willing to make purchases online, which was a big hurdle back in '94. It was a big hurdle even in 2000, people purchasing online. And I think an important early adopter component is that they like to explore books, right? Because one of the advantages Amazon brought is this almost unlimited supply of books. So let's go to section 2. Section 2 is your problem you see in the market, or the opportunity you see. So what was the problem? What did Jeff Bezos, the CEO, founder of Amazon, see that caused him to want to create Amazon? Well, one, he noted that bookstores were expensive. Everything was, there was rarely sales. If they were, they were on products that no one wanted. So what is a second problem or opportunity found? He found that most bookstores, we're thinking pre-internet time. Yes, there was some of the big box stores, but even they had limited inventory. They could only carry so much, which was a challenge. So he thought, the internet might, be able to fix that as something online. And then lastly, he said it's hard to find books and get recommendations at bookstores. Yes, you can go in and ask. Maybe there's a book club. Maybe you can ask someone that works there. But it's really one person's recommendation. Much rather hear what 10 people that have read 10 other books I've liked tell me about one book. So there was an opportunity here where many people giving recommendations versus what I got at bookstores could be solved. So what were the alternatives? So this is the second part of the second section of the Lean Canvas. Just who are my competitors? Who am I competing with? Obviously, it's bookstores. Books were sold through catalogs regularly. And there were book clubs where you subscribed to it and a couple books were sent every few weeks or every month for it. None of these really solved any of the problems that Amazon wanted to solve, which was trying to make them less expensive, having an unlimited inventory, and making it easy to find books and get recommendations across all sorts of genres. So the next section is your unique value proposition. This is where your problem, ultimately your solution, your customer segments all come together, and there has to be something that is valuable about what you're doing to the customers that is going to trigger them to either go to your site, make a purchase from you, follow your blog, whatever it is. And really what their value proposition was, we're Earth's largest bookstore. Their name even came from it. They chose the name Amazon because of the river and the size. It was almost unmappable. It was so large. And for their target audience, particularly the early adopters, to being the Earth's largest bookstore resonated with them. The next component of the third section of the Lean Canvas is a high-level concept. Now, this is important when you're doing something that hasn't been done before or in a way it's really distinct. Sometimes you need to give a reference point to your investors or even yourself of how you'd quickly describe what it is we do. In this case, Amazon said, we're going to be the supermarket of bookstores online. Okay, that makes sense. I understand a supermarket is a very large place with lots of variety, and it's going to be online. This is something I've never seen before. The next section, section 4, is your solution. Now this may be your service you provide, it's your product you deliver, or a whole combination thereof. Now you notice that its box is small, and that's actually on purpose, is that your customers and your problem are really your most important things to solve. Your solution most likely will change and evolve as you learn more about your customer and the problem you're trying to solve. Now, so you have to just simply outline what is it our solution is. And it may have multiple bullet points or features. In this case, for Amazon back then, it's a website that sells all books available. That at its core is what Amazon is. Second, it was a website that allowed web-based customer reviews. So it became a way to identify new types of literature to read, new books, and hear other people's comments around people that have actually purchased it, not just critics. Third, part of the solution was to ship direct from distributor. This meant I didn't have to carry large inventories, I didn't have to worry about all the logistics, that if I shipped directly from distributor, I was able to basically sell any book that is available from any distributor and keep the costs low. And there was one other one that I pulled out from the early business plans of Amazon, which is they put it as a question mark. And this is okay to do, is maybe we might actually have our own warehouse too. Because compared to the competitors, which were all retail components or catalog, which really was a dying business model, that having a warehouse, once they hit a certain scale, might make sense. Now we can look in hindsight and realize it really did make sense. They're one of the best logistics companies in the world with some of the best warehouse operations around. But back then, that was a huge purchase thought for them. At the beginning, it was just, can we have the most books available? Moving on to the next section, channels. Channels is how you're going to sell your product. In some case, you might have a channel partner like a distributor or have to sell through a retailer. In other cases, like in Amazon, they were going to sell direct to customer through their website. So their product was the channel. There also was one other channel, which was just starting to emerge, was to be able to leverage email to get people to click through to buy their product. It was still eventually going to come back through the website for purchase, but email was becoming a channel to attract and build sales. Section 6, next one, revenue streams. Very simply, where are your sources of revenue? Now, pretty straightforward with Amazon, they were going to sell books, so their book sales. That was a revenue source. Now, were there other sources of revenue for them? Well, yes, they charged shipping fees back then, so that was another revenue stream for them. So pretty simple, straightforward. It's not all the details, but it gives the foundation off of that to know where should I be looking from revenue to build out my financial model. Moving on to the other side of the financial equation, the cost structure. And it's important here that you're both looking for your fixed and variable costs. Variable costs are costs you incur whenever you sell your product. And often are considered costs of goods sold, but not necessarily. And fixed costs are the ones that you're going to recur month after month. Your salaries and wages, your rent, any legal and service fees that you have, your travel expenses are going to go here. Now, you're not looking to do a line item of all the details. What you're trying to do is go, what are the key areas of our business operations, our business model that are going to incur costs? Well, obviously, we're going to have the website operations and the developers and the team that has to manage that. So we have servers back then and anything to do with the data center. And all the staff that runs the website. We're selling something, we're going to need good customer service staff. And we're going to need a center they work for, and the phones and all the other overhead that goes with that. We're going to need some sort of logistics and fulfillment staff and other costs that go with it. Even if we're not shipping out of our own warehouse, we still have to manage the shipping with our distributors and returns and that part of it. So that's another area of cost. And lastly, and this is the variable cost for them, would be the books and the shipping of the books, but I built that more into the logistics component, is the books are a cost we're going to incur whenever we sell something. Moving on to section 8, the key metrics. One of the most overlooked components when someone builds a business plan or a business model is how are we really going to measure our traction? What are some ones that matter? Now, this was a little hard to decipher for Amazon back then, but I went to some basic numbers that are very important to e-commerce. And so the first one was sales conversion per visitor. So this is a number, a metric I'd look is for every person that shows up on our website, how many buy something. That conversion is very important to your financial modeling to figure out your assumptions of your traffic and how much revenue you'll make. The next important metric is average sales per transaction. So when someone buys something, what is the average sale? If you're getting 100 customers buy $100 each, is a different dynamic than if you get 1,000 customers, buying 10. Yes, the gross number is different, but really the buyer behavior is different, and you may have to adjust your pricing, your product mix, or a mix of all of them to satisfy the way people are actually using your product. And the final metric, and this is really just a combination of the two metrics above, but I think it's good sometimes to have related metrics, is this, what is our total sales to how many visitors we have, in a ratio format? And that lets me know that if I can get another 10,000 visitors to our site, I can increase our sales by X numbers very quickly. And these are important ratios to know, not just pitching your company, but also really to understand where you should focus your time, where you should focus your marketing to build revenue and increase the traffic and traction for your idea. And the last box, the unfair advantage. So this is often related to the unique value proposition, but it's really more not from the customer viewpoint, but something that is unique to what you're doing, how you're putting together your business model, how you've combined all these pieces. It may be a piece of technology or several pieces, but often it's just something you figured out a way to do a little differently and you're going to execute different. And in this case, it's our unfair advantage is an unlimited selection of books with great prices and customer service. If we can do that, and we were first movers, Amazon was in the case, if Amazon could do that, they could own the market. Now, hindsight being 2020, we can say, yeah, they executed on this miraculously. They adjusted and refined their business model, but once they nailed it, they started executing on it and growing, and then they started expanding. They went to new products, and whenever another company comes along that is able to really have the same unfair advantage they have, but in something different, they've bought them. So Zappos, which was for shoes, really had the same, almost the same unfair advantage as Amazon. They bought them. Diapers.com, same thing, bought them. So you find they've made some really strategic moves off of their core unfair advantage, which has become a core competency of the company they are. Now this is the lean canvas. It takes some time to do. I walked through it rather quickly just to show you how to build it out, but you're going to have to do the research and thinking about your business to figure out how to clearly and concisely answer each one of these blocks. But once you've done it, you don't have your business. You have a bunch of assumptions you think is what your business will be. The next steps will be, once you launch your business, is to start validating these, testing essentially each hypothesis and go, is this really the customer? Is this the price? Is the metrics that really matter, or is there something else I could be measure? But with this foundation, you can take your company from $0 to $100 million as the core tool for planning and management meetings to know exactly where the company should be. There is some revisions on this plan once you're up and running company, but the core structure pretty much is the same.